Did you know that in 1939, when Byron's vault was last opened, that they found the poet completely preserved? In this video, I'm going to be showing you some images from the vault. I'm going to be asking the question, what's Byron's connection to vampires? Why did they cut his heart out? And where is it today? I'm Lauren-Jane, I'm a doctor, and welcome to Newstead Abbey. George Gordon, who would go on to be our Lord Byron, was born in 1788. And he actually wasn't set to be Lord Byron and inherit this estate, which he does at the age of 10. Now he's the grandson of a legendary admiral called Foulweather Jack, and his father is a navy captain who's called Mad Jack, and his uncle, who's Lord Byron, is called the Wicked Lord. Now there's a lot of mad and foul weather and wicked in this family tree, which actually makes sense if you know Byron's story and what comes later. Now, Byron would obviously go on to be one of the greatest poets that has ever existed. And he becomes, in British society, the absolute toast of the town. Everyone wants a piece of him, they want him at dinners. But sadly for Byron, there start to be some rumours circulating that he's a little bit unsavoury. And when rumours start to circulate that he's had a relationship with his sister, and he almost certainly does have a child out of wedlock with his sister Augusta Lee, he becomes cut from British society. He tries to remedy this, and because of his financial difficulties, he marries a lady called Annabella Milbank. But their relationship goes sour very quickly, and she threatens to expose him for both homosexuality and for heterosexual sodomy, both of which are illegal in England at this time. And at that point, he sells Newstead and he leaves for Greece, and he never returns to England as a living person ever again. Let's talk about the connection between Byron and vampires. Now, I want you to think of a vampire, any vampire, I don't care whether it's Dracula, Bela Lugosi style, or Edward Cullen. They're almost always the same type of person, higher social class, brooding, kind of contemptuous about their own wealth. Byronic, right? Well, actually, historically, the idea of a vampire was very different. They were toads or fire demons. And then, in the wet summer of 1816, the event happened that is like my dream event. I really want to go back in time and be there. In Geneva, in Switzerland, on the sides of Lake Geneva, at a villa called Villa Diodati, you have Byron, you have Percy Shelley, you have Mary Shelley, and you have Byron's doctor, a guy called John Polidori. And in this wet, awful summer, they decide to create a competition. They will all write a ghost story. Now, Mary Shelley writes a little known story called Frankenstein, and Byron writes something called a fragment of a novel. And later, John Polidori will change this into a novel called The Vampire. And this story will basically found the whole vampire genre. His main character, Lord Ruthven, is interesting because most people believe that he is based on Byron himself. Now, the name Ruthven is interesting because in years previous, Lady Caroline Lamb, who was an ex of Byron's, wrote a novel called Glenarvan, and her main character was also called Lord Ruthven, and everyone knew that this was based on Lord Byron. It's an unflattering portrait of Lord Byron. Now, the fact that John Polidori chooses the name Lord Ruthven for his vampire, his main character, is strongly suggestive of the fact that the character is based on Lord Byron. And so when you look at a character like Dracula, like Edward Cullen, they all have a lot of Byronic attributes. And that all starts right here at Newstead. But does that have any connection as to why they cut his heart out? This is the church St Mary Magdalene in Hucknall, and this is where Byron and Ada's vault is. Let's go and have a look where the poet is buried. So this is actually the top of the vault, and if you look down here you can see the actual stone, which is one of the top stones of the vault. So he's lying right underneath here. Just right. The vault extends this way. So this is the vault here, and Byron is lying right underneath my feet here. Now, in 1823, Byron becomes enamoured with the struggle between the Greeks and the Turks, and in February of that year he takes a ship and he plans to attack the fortress at Lepanto. But sadly he becomes unwell, and he's further weakened by a series of bloodletting, which is kind of standard medical practice at the time. He gets better, but in April he catches a cold and sadly he passes away. Now, to the Greeks at this point, and to this day, he is still a hero. But in England, we are still not happy with him. We think he's immoral. So the Greeks want to keep him, but we kind of insist that he comes back. But his body is embalmed there in Greece. Now, his heart and his brain are removed at this point. We know that his body goes to Basiladi and then to Zante, and it makes its journey all the way back to England. There is then a 4-day progression from where he lands all the way to Hucknall Church, where he is buried in the vault. And I'm going to be showing you pictures of the vault, guys, in the next section. His heart and his brain. Now, I have 2 accounts of this. Firstly, the contemporary accounts seem to suggest that his heart and brain are kept in Greece, and this is very much what Byron wanted. Byron wanted to stay in Greece. He didn't want to come back to England. And I think that those remains are stored in the Garden of Heroes underneath his cenotaph. Now, when I went to visit the vault, one of the members of staff at the church said that Byron's brain and heart is definitely there in the vault. Now, when they opened it in 1939, and we're going to be getting into this because it's crazy interesting in a minute, there are pictures of urns that say so-and-so's heart, so-and-so's brain. This is standard practice at the time as part of embalming, to remove these organs and store them separately. But on none of the pictures that I've seen does it say that they have Lord Byron's heart and brain. So I think the most likely location of his heart and brain is underneath the cenotaph in the Garden of Heroes. But what of his body? Let's talk about the vault. So this vault at Hucknall Church, it was called Hucknall Tokard Village at the time, I think part of the Newstead estate, was created in the 17th century. Now, there are 27 of them in there, and it is a small vault. So basically what happened is, as we know, Byron comes back from Greece and he gets buried in the vault. His daughter, Ada Lovelace, follows. She's the last person to be buried in the vault in the 1850s. Now, we're going to skip ahead to 1939, which is when the vault was last opened. And there were people at that point who kind of remembered the vault being opened for Ada to go into it. But between Ada being buried and between it being opened in 1939, there had been some renovations of the church, especially since Byron's time, and people couldn't exactly remember. They knew where kind of the vault was, but because the dimensions of the church had changed, no one was really quite sure exactly where the vault lay underneath their feet. And so in 1939, the vault was opened, and there's a guy called Barber. He goes down with an antiquarian, a surveyor, and he basically takes pictures inside the vault, which we're going to be looking at, and he opens Byron's coffin. And of course he says, I'd heard all these rumours that Byron's body wasn't in there, and I had to know. Dude, we know. You just had to see for yourself. And I get it, because I would have done too. Right, so let's look at these really cool pictures. Okay, so firstly, what you're looking at here is kind of a schematic of the vault. It's really small. The coffin that you're seeing here, the largest one, that's Byron's coffin. And we'll look at a photo in a minute. And then next to that, with the more complicated ring, that's a coronet, that's Ada's coffin. At the foot of Byron's, that's a child's coffin. And underneath those coffins are a succession of more coffins. There are 27 of them in there, and they are stacked on top of each other. There is no, when you think of a vault, you kind of think of shelves, don't you? It's not like that. They're literally just piled on top of each other. It's a really small space. Now, these are some pictures that have been taken from inside the vault. So what you're seeing in this image, this is a picture of Byron's coffin and Ada's coffin, and that third smaller coffin that you're seeing on the edge of the schematic. So the one that's closest to the camera without the little pearls on the top, that's Byron right there. And then next to that, with the coronet that has the pearls on top, that is Ada Lovelace, his daughter. Now, you can see some spikes on top of the coronet on Byron's coffin. Likely his coronet would also have had pearls, but they've been taken by Victorian treasure hunters effectively. Now, the coffins are not in the best of states, like the lead is collapsing. Here's another picture which just gives you a bit more sense of how stacked on top of each other they are. So you can see underneath here that Byron and Ada's coffin are resting on top of other coffins. It's kind of sacrilegious. It's not comfortable viewing. And here is a picture of an urn, the urns we were talking about, that say things like, within this urn are deposited the heart and brain of the deceased of Lord Noel Byron. Now, this is not Lord Byron, so his name is George Gordon, and we are not seeing, as far as I can see, his heart and brains in this vault. And here's the account of Barber when he looks into Byron's coffin. Within the case was another coffin of wood. The lid had never been fastened. What was beneath it? If I raised it, what should I discover? Dare I look within? I would have. Yes, the world should know the truth, that the body of the great poet was there, or that the coffin was empty, reverently, very reverently. Obviously he wants us to know that, he's doing this for us and he's doing it gently. We know, sure. I raised the lid, and before my eyes there lay the embalmed body of Byron, in as perfect condition as when it was placed in the coffin 114 years ago. That's because this is 1939. His expression on his face made a profound impression upon me. The feet and ankles were uncovered, and I was able to establish the fact that his lameness had been that of his right foot, because obviously Byron has a club foot. But enough. I gently lowered the lid of the coffin, and as I did so, breathed a prayer for the peace of his soul. And then he goes on to see that Lord Byron's mother is also in, finds her kind of coffin. So this is his report, but I have found another hilarious report for you, which is what I'm gonna finish on. So there was a guy called Rogers, and he was a journalist, I think in the 1950s, and he read Barbara's account and became like really obsessed with the pictures they'd taken and this story in his book and everything. So he decided in, I think, the 1950s to go and have a rumble around Hucknall and see if anyone was alive who'd actually been involved in this kind of escapade. And he managed to track down one of the workmen who'd entered the vault. And this is what he had to say. And honestly, this is a chap called Arnold Holdsworth, and he's speaking in the 1950s, and he is talking about opening the vault. We didn't take too kindly to that, he said. I mean, we'd done the work, and Jim Betteridge suddenly says, let's have a look on him. You can't do that, I says. Just you watch me, said Jim. He put his spade in. There was a layer of wood, and then one of lead, and another one of wood. And there he was, old Byron. Good God, what did he look like? I said, and this is Rogers, the journalist. Just like in his portraits. He was bone down, from his elbows to his hands and from the knees down, but the rest was perfect. And so far this kind of agrees with what, Barbara has said. Good looking man, putting on a bit of weight. He'd gone bald. He was quite naked, And then he stopped, listening for something that must have been the clatter of china in the kitchen, where his wife was making tea for us. For he went on very quickly. Look, I've been in the army. I've been in bathhouses. I've seen men, but I never saw nothing like him. He stopped again, nodding his head meaningfully. As novelists say, began to tap a spot just above his knee. He was built like a pony, he said. And so at the end of this quest, I feel like the organ that I was looking for is not the one I necessarily found. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you're interested in these videos, there's one on Richard III, there's one on the Brontes. If there's a specific topic that you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts on this story. I think it might be my favourite so far, although I need to go back to Harworth and film as close as I can to the Brontes vault for you. It is my life. It is like my life. I just really want to go in these vaults, guys. I know I shouldn't, but I do. I do. It's not ethical, I know I can't, and there's like something secret in my head that just was like, to be Barbara and go down there. Anyway, please like and sub because it does help a small channel like mine, and I'm always so grateful for your comments and for your time, so thank you so much. Until next week.